Joining us now, National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett had a long history with the great Greenspan. He was larger than life. Kevin, what was it like? Tell us your history with the former chairman.
Sure. First, my heart goes out to Andrea. You know, that was a couple that you could tell that was just deeply in love throughout their lifetime. I saw Andrea at the correspondents' dinner, and we talked about how Alan was doing, and you know, his brain was sharp right up into the very end. In the first term of the Trump administration, I used to meet with him once a month just to pick his brain about what he thinks about the policies that we're doing and so on. But my history really began in the 90s, where I was actually the young guy charged with modeling the impact of computers and the internet on the economy with him in the late 90s. And you know, I would get notes on my chair. What about this? What about that? Should we change the deflator for this or deflator for that? He was just an absolutely brilliant mind who saw the computer revolution happening before anyone else did. And if you go back and look at the history of the American economy going back over the last 50 years, I think Greenspan's judgment to leave the economy alone and let the internet boom happen and the productivity boom from internet happen, even when Bob Gordon was saying, hey, there's no productivity there, he knew it was going to be there. And that judgment created an enormous amount of wealth and prosperity for our country. I want to add one other thing. My very first day at the job at the Fed, I was on leave from Columbia. I was the youngest guy in the room. Greenspan came in. I was in awe that Greenspan was going to be in there with all these giants of the economic profession. And the very first thing he did is ask me my opinion, because that's what a sweetheart he was. He saw there's a young guy here, a new person. We got to show that we care what he thinks, even though what I thought probably wasn't that valuable to him.
It's funny. History rhymes, I guess. Kevin, I was trying to find out. I thought it was someone's mother, whether it was Ken Olsen or Steve Jobs, or somebody said, what are you talking about? Why would anyone need their own computer or a personal computer? Someone said that at some point. So it wasn't just a given that Greenspan was able to figure out that productivity was going to soar, and therefore you could let the economy run hot. He deduced that. Huh?
But he didn't just deduce it. He thought about how to figure it out. And one thing that the FOIA people out there should look into is that he had his economic team that worked in the business sector, I was one of those guys, do something he called the order survey. And the order survey was basically, we would call up his friends that were CEOs of really big companies like GE, and machine tool companies and so on, and basically ask them, how are your orders doing? So he had a near-term indicator. But then also we would have conversations. So, hey, is this computer thing making a difference for you? And so on. So way ahead of the government data, he had us out there gathering intel with his friends who were CEOs all over the economy. And people were telling us early in '96, yeah, you know, we're starting to use this email thing. That's really helped us with word processing, so we don't have to have typists everywhere and so on. So it really did begin very, very early on, because he was innovative in the way he collected data.
So how confident are you that the current Fed chairman is on the cusp of another period like what we were just referring to back in the 90s? You're very confident, right. And on an order of magnitude, it could be as powerful or even greater?
Well, you know, Mark Andreessen, you know, friends of mine like Mark and Eric Schmidt, they've said publicly that, you know, they saw that thing, and, you know, Mark really started it with Netscape Navigator, and they think this is bigger. And the thing that I can say, you know, in the end, like how it ends is something that economists could guess about, but we'll have to wait and see. But in the end, I think the thing that's really different about this time is that these AI companies are printing money, and the firms that hire them to improve how they operate, they're printing money. And so there are all these profits everywhere in the AI sector. As you might remember, during the dot-com era, everybody had a vision of what the future might be, but that vision wasn't making profits anytime soon. And so I think that the proof is in the pudding, in the sense that AI is there to see already in profits, which suggests that, you know, you don't have to just like have an imagination to value these things.
Yep. I think Alan Greenspan, when he thought about the size of the federal debt, no one could have thought in numbers like 40 trillion.
Right.
And yet we still really haven't seen the effects of that in terms of bond yields or anything. what does the Trump administration, what are you advising the president or the administration to try to do to deal with that? I know that Treasury Secretary Bessent would like to get debt to GDP down, or the deficit to GDP down, if possible. But, you know, things like wars happen.
Right. Well, I mean, getting debt to GDP down is a high priority of the president's, as Secretary Bessent has reiterated. It's very much been the anchor point in our presidential budget every year. And we've been working hard to take steps that are permanent so that we move in the right direction every year. And so one thing, as an example, is that we've reduced federal employment by about 300,000 workers now. That's savings, budget savings that's going to be there forever. When you look at the CBO forecast, they assume we're going to hire those folks back, but that's certainly not our intent while President Trump's in office. And so for sure, we care a lot about fiscal sanity, and government spending constraint is really the thing that helps you accomplish that goal. Our objective is that, and we're already seeing it, that the big beautiful bill's tax side is going to have big growth effects that we're seeing. We made expensing last for 4 years for factories and permanent for everything else. And we just had, some of the best capital spending data we've ever seen since I've been following capital spending with Chairman Greenspan in the 90s. We had a month that was sort of 40% at an annual rate for non-defense capital goods, excluding aircraft. And so I think the policies are working, that should help us with the revenue side on taxes, and spending reductions are a big part of where we are.
Where do you think oil should be? Were you surprised to see it come down this quickly? I heard that everything's shut in and it takes time to restart, and the Straits either is open or at least it's not at 100%. What's your feeling?
Right. I think the futures markets have actually, if we go back and look, you could ask, Leisman's the best chart guy in the business, so you could maybe get him to show you a chart. But if you look at what the futures markets were saying all along from the beginning of this episode, that they pretty much got it right. And so right now, futures markets are saying that, we're headed down into the 70s sometime soon. People are reluctant to buy at the spot price because they think that the futures price is going to be so low. And I can say that J.D. Vance has been, on the ball in Switzerland, negotiating with the Iranians. He reports great progress, reports that the UN is going to inspect their nuclear facilities. And we're getting some of the really, really big tankers out of the Straits now, so that the amount of oil coming through the Straits as of the beginning of the weekend was almost as much as we saw pre-war. So I think that right now there's still work to do. But J.D. Vance has made a huge amount of progress. The fact that they're open to UN inspectors suggests that, while the Israeli conflict with Hezbollah is something that's going to still have to be discussed, the oil market impact of this thing, I believe, is mostly resolved.
So if let's say that the other Kevin, who'll forever be, Kevin's not great either, because that's supposedly a male Karen. I don't know. I don't know whether that's going to stick or not.
You're going to give him grief about his first name.
Yeah, I am, because I'm leading to Kevin Warsh. What if Kevin Warsh were to call you and say, you almost got this job, and now I caught this bus that I wish I hadn't caught. Should I cut rates in the next 6 months? Would you tell him to cut rates in the next 6 months because oil's down and productivity's up?
We're very close friends. We've known each other for 30 years. We definitely talk. But he's not asking the White House for advice what to do on interest rates. I think that if you look at the things that he communicated after the first meeting, you can see that he's organizing the Fed to make sure that, there are new procedures, new ways of thinking about things, inspection of old models, and so on, so that we never get back to a situation where the Fed's not moving and we got 9% inflation. And so I think that on net, if I were at the Fed, that I absolutely, the first meeting, you want to kind of get your feet on the ground and hold steady. But he made a huge amount of progress that he's communicated to the outside world about how he's going to improve the Fed. It's 100% consistent with what he said in the confirmation hearing. So I'm really hopeful about it.
Price stability. We were just talking about how, that. How many, what did we say, 60? How long has the Fed been above the 2% target?
63 months, I think.
63 months or something.
Yeah, it's been a while. But I think he focused on price stability so much just because the unemployment picture has been so strong. that if if we were looking at 6% unemployment, he of course would have talked about the dual mandate.
You are such a optimist and so half full all the time, which I guess that's why the president always says he likes it when you're on TV. Well, anyway, hey, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, he didn't want to make you fetch it because he wouldn't know who he'd have there talking. Anyway, we'll see you later. Thanks.
We have a good time. Thanks.
Okay.